Hello, everyone. This is Rafael Jose. I'm an associate broker over here with Keller Williams in Nassau County. I cover Queens and Nassau. And what I'm going to go over right now are grieving, pretty much lowering your property taxes, especially if you live in Nassau County. So this applies to if you own a home in Nassau County. The deadline has been extended. Before it was March 1st, it's been extended to April 30th. Okay. High property taxes are major point of contention over here in Nassau County. I think most people know about that, especially in Nassau County. Taxes are high. That's what people say all the time. And who I have with me is Michelle Lagrasso. She works for Heller Consultants, and you're a tax grievance company, correct, Michelle?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. So Nassau County recently reassessed all properties in the county. And the only way to reduce your taxes is by actually doing a tax grievance. Okay. Now, even if you plan to sell, it's still a great idea because you have to understand that if your property taxes are a certain amount and you get to grieve your taxes and actually mention that there's a high likelihood that your taxes are going to be grieved, it's good to market the property in that respect, because that's what buyers are looking for. I mean, it makes a difference when a buyer looks at a house with a certain amount of taxes compared to another, even if it's the same house. Okay,
Right.
so Michelle, let us know, because I know you can do it yourself. People have the option of doing it themselves, right?
They do. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's a couple different things that people can do. I definitely encourage all Nassau property owners to file a grievance this year. As you mentioned, there was a fairly recent reassessment, and filing a grievance is the only way that someone can be sure that their taxes are fair and they're not paying too much. So it's a good idea to file a grievance. Um, they can certainly file on their own. There's paperwork, I believe, right on the Nassau County website. Someone can Google and learn the process, or they can hire a professional tax grievance company. There's, I guess I would say, plus and minuses to everything, right? I would say a few tips for people that want to try to do it on their own. Keep in mind that you very often will receive a denial. And the mistake that a lot of people make is they receive a denial and they think that they don't have a case. They think that means their assessment is fair, and that is not always the case. Very often there are further processes that do end up resulting in a reduction, and that would be by when you receive that denial, filing an appeal and taking the case to court, and that is typically where the reduction will be won. And the other situation would be that you get an offer for a reduction from Nassau County. So many homeowners can apply on their own. They'll receive an offer for a reduction, and that's great news. They did it on their own. They didn't have to pay anyone to do it for them. But in my experience, and I've been doing this for about 12 years now, what I find is, I would say, most often the case, I mean, I don't know if I'd say 100%, but pretty close to 100% of the time, the offers that the homeowner receives are not as large as what a professional tax grievance company would have accepted on their behalf. So I still recommend appealing and then, having that case heard in court. So it is a little bit of a process. So if someone has the time on their hands and knowledge and they want to do it on their own, certainly that is a viable option. My recommendation would be to hire a professional tax grievance company. I hire my own company to do mine. I just think it makes more sense. They're experts in what they do. But certainly people can file on their own, and they can use a professional tax grievance company as well.
What are some of the advantages of hiring a company? Like, what do you guys do that's a little bit different compared to someone
Well,
who?
like I said, real estate agents, as you are, Rafael, you
Yeah.
guys have access to a lot of information. And so you would maybe know if an assessed value on a property is fair as compared to other current market values of properties by looking at comparable sales. Homeowners don't always have access to that information. So that's one thing. They need to know what the current market value is. They cannot look at a neighbor's tax bill and argue a case that way. Many homes are underassessed. And so you can't look at a neighboring property and say, oh, well, their taxes are only, 13,000 and mine are 16. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So, you can't look at another home, like I said, and you don't want to. If you are a homeowner that wants to go in and give it a try on your own, remember that you're not arguing your tax bill, you're arguing your tax assessment. So you can't argue that your bill is too high. You have to argue that your assessed value is too high. And again, you cannot look at other similar properties tax bills. You have to know what the current market value of your home is as compared to what the county is currently assessing you at.
Okay.
There are also other factors that come into play. They're called assessment ratios. And so your assessed value is not exactly what you might see on my Nassau property. It's actually a little bit higher than that. So just keep in mind that your assessment might be a little higher than what you're seeing on my Nassau property. So, there's a lot of information that you need to know. And if you want to have the most successful case, I would say use an expert, but you can certainly try on your own using a tax grievance company. Of course, they have access to a lot of information. They know what the market value is calling for right now on your property. And because tax grievance companies, I know this is how we work, and it's pretty much industry standard. There are a few other companies that charge fees up front and flat fees, but most tax grievance companies in Nassau County and on Long Island will charge you a fee based on the savings. And so they, of course, want to win you the largest reduction possible because that's how they'll get paid. Like I know for us, if we don't save you anything, it doesn't cost you anything. So of course we want to save you money. So that's one of the advantages of using a professional company.
Yeah, thank you so much for that info, Michelle. I mean, so it's pretty clear, folks. You can basically do this on your own, like Michelle alluded to, but you could also hire a company. Okay, so it's good news. But the important thing is to make sure you get it done because taxes, again, are way too high. And the good thing is that the deadline has been extended to April 30th. I mean, we were all thinking March 1st, and that's why I kind of wanted to get it out there. You just let me know that it's been extended to April 30th. So Michelle, I have a few questions if you don't mind. Okay, so there's some confusion about people thinking that, okay, everything has been frozen. Like the assessments have been frozen. My taxes are going to go up. What does that actually mean? Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that question because a lot of Nassau homeowners are now mistakenly under the assumption that that means that their tax bills are frozen and that they will not see an increase in their tax bill. Freezing an assessment is not the same as freezing your tax bill. So basically what that means is every home is assigned, it's called an assessed value. And this number is usually between, say, 3 and 4 digits. That number is what translates to your taxable market value. And as I mentioned just a few moments ago, there are some assessment ratios that impact what that taxable market value will be. So your assessed value is staying the same. There can be changes to the assessment ratio, which would thereby change your taxable market value. And then also we have something called tax rates. And depending on what those tax rates are, those are multiplied by your assessed value to create your tax bill. So the tax rates are not frozen, and they can by law increase by up to 6% a year. So depending on what the county's budget is, it's likely people can expect to see about a 6% increase to their tax bills. It just means that your assessed values are not being changed. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I mean, if you think about it, property values have gone up significantly over the last 2 years or so. The taxable value can still be higher based on these assessment ratios once they're factored in. And I know this is a little complicated and complex, but the fact is that there are other factors that contribute to what your tax bill is, the value that you're being taxed at. And so a frozen assessed value does not mean that your tax bill is not going to increase. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Well, that's great information. And I mean, the assessment process is very complex. Yeah. I mean, it's not something so simple that people can easily grasp. I mean, it's
right.
But thanks for clarifying that. Now, the next question that I have is, if someone files this year, when does that actually go into effect?
So that's a good question also, because in Nassau County, they do things a little bit differently. This now new deadline, April 30th, is for the 2023-24 tax year. So anyone that grieves their taxes and submits their application before this 2022 deadline, this will impact their 2023-24 tax bill.
Okay.
So if someone misses the deadline, the next opportunity that they will have to reduce their taxes is 2024-25 tax bill. So wow. Okay. Don't miss the deadline, basically.
Yeah. And you know what? The next question is, I mean, I get this from some folks. They're like, wait a minute, if I file my grievance, is there any way my property taxes can actually go up?
That's
instead
a
of
good question.
decreasing?
Also, it's a very common fear that a lot of homeowners have. They're afraid to file because they think, what if there's something, what if I'm paying too little and they find out and now my taxes go up? New York is one of the few states that are protected against that. So they cannot, it's against the law for them to raise your taxes just because you filed a grievance. So if
Okay,
you file a grievance and they say, oh, you're actually underassessed, lucky you, you're underassessed. They cannot increase your assessment just because you filed a grievance. So
great point.
that's
So
it.
now, if someone decides to sell and they hire a company like yours and says, you know what, I can benefit from having my taxes grieved because it's good to market it that way. It'll be good for the buyer also. Now, what happens? Who picks up the tab?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially since we just talked about how we're grieving right now for 2023-24 tax bill. If a homeowner is getting ready to list their house now or is already on the market or listing before then, they might think, why would I bother filing a grievance? I'm not going to reap the benefit from a reduced tax bill. But as you mentioned, Rafael, it's definitely going to make that home more attractive to a prospective buyer. And what we do is simply transfer that grievance case over to the new buyer. So and for anyone that's listening out there that is a buyer in contract and they haven't closed on their property, say they're not going to close by that April 30th deadline, they can actually start the grievance process themselves. So that's an important little tip for anyone that's caught in that limbo area. Don't miss the deadline. But we can easily transfer the case over. It doesn't cost anything to do it. The buyer would then pay a fee for a successful reduction. They would benefit from the reduced tax bill. And now it's helped the seller to make their home more attractive to a prospective buyer, because think about it, there are many properties that are overassessed. We hold the record in Nassau for the largest reduction on a residential property. It was about $73,000 a
Wow,
year in savings. But
that's a lot of
there
money.
are many homes where there's, $6, $7, $8,000 a year in potential tax savings. So if there's a Nassau homeowner that's trying to sell their property and their taxes are, $7,000 too high, that's going to be a big burden for a buyer to have to carry that tax bill for, if they miss the deadline till 2024-25. So it can certainly be a deterrent. And in those cases, that's when people have to start reducing their price. And that means
Okay.
less money for the seller. That's not a good situation. So filing grievance when you're selling is just a fantastic idea. It makes a lot of sense and it helps every single person involved. So it's a good idea to do that.
Well,
Good
thank you
question.
so. I mean, this information was very useful. I get this from so many people, and it's confusing.
Yeah.
People don't really know what to
Well,
do.
I'm happy to help, and anyone can
Yeah.
reach out anytime
So,
to
so
answer
Michelle,
questions.
how do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you? For
Yeah,
your
so
services?
our company is Heller Tax Grievance, and so our website is www.hellertaxgrievance.com. My name is Michelle. My direct contact number, I have a cell phone that you can call, text anytime. It's 516-361-0001. And then my email is michelle@hcgrieve.com.
Okay, folks, thank you so much for listening. As always, if you ever need any real estate help, always feel free to reach out to me. Again, my phone number is 516-721-8357. You can call me, you can text me. All right, so we'll see you guys in the next video.